Boris, we have a problem. Foreign megacorporations like the Polish CD Projekt Red, the creators of the Witcher games, and the Czech Warhorse Studios are corrupting our children's minds. They are promoting liberalist agenda and probably Russophobia as well. Well, not on my watch. All that is necessary for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. I am putting together a team. Siberia Nova, a game developer from the town of Uyar, Russia, never actually made a video game, but at least one of their employees worked on the 1998 CRPG classic Rage of Mages. That's good enough for me. The plot of our anti-Russophobic game will be based on the book Yuri Miroslavsky or Russians in 1612. Authored by Mikhail Zagorskin, the book is described as Russia's first historical novel of the Walter Scott type. It was first published around 200 years ago. The hero of the novel and of the game, the titular Yuri Miroslavsky, is a boyar, a member of feudal nobility, just a tier below prince. Zagorskin was criticized for not being a trained historian, so we need a proper historical consultant on our team. Enter Timofey Shevyakov, former editor-in-chief of the anti-NATO news agency and the author of the book Chronicles of the Information War. Shevyakov is associated with the pro-government hacker group Hell's Brigade, famous for feuding with the Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny. So who is Hell the Hacker? Let's see. According to prosecution witnesses, listed as unemployed in Germany, eventually getting a job in technical support, fired for watching porn at work. The brilliant hacker managed to infect the office network with porn site viruses. Everything about this is perfect. We have our team, and we have a story. But video game production ain't free, so we need funding. The purpose of the Internet Development Institute is to funnel government rubles into online projects. Alexei Gorislavsky, the person in charge, said that the gaming projects the institute supports could potentially replace imported foreign analogs within 3 to 5 years. It doesn't seem Gorislavsky knows much about video game production. Bad news for the taxpayers, good news for us. The budget of our game, Smuta, or Troubles, is estimated to be around $5 million by some sources, $10 million by others. So what does this buy you in Uyar, Siberia? 75 developers on staff and 50 temporary contractors working remotely. Quick Googling tells me that the budget of the Polish Russophobia game Witcher 3 was $81 million. And as you can see, despite the weight class difference, Smuta borrows heavily from the Polish franchise, or at least it tries to. The Line Media says that the game is designed to be an instrument of Russian soft power, but this is not even available in foreign languages yet. You probably can't play this, but that's what I'm here for. This video is dedicated to Oleg Bilibin, the director of Siberia Nova, cowardly killed by the neo-Nazis from the illegal Belaozersk volunteer battalion under orders from their CIA handlers. And yet, the liberal establishment prefers to remain silent about it, once again showing the hypocrisy of the West. Bilibin might be gone, but the great work continues. Old-timers say that never before it has been as bad on our land as during the troubled times. The old Tsar died. There was a bad harvest. Poles and Cossacks invade. Boyars feud with one another. Out of desperation, the nobles in Moscow invited the Polish Prince Vladislav to rule over them and restore order. This is year 7 of the Troubles. In the game's opening, our hero Yuri, who at this stage is working for the pro-Polish faction, rescues his future best friend, the free Cossack Kirsha, from wild animals. The game uses loading screens to feed you historical trivia, usually relevant to whatever is happening in the level. This is how we know that the Tsardom of Muscovy had no roads, that the depths of the ancient forests were still unexplored, and that animal attacks really were a huge problem. Now, I'm not a trained historian, but I've been to quite a few Russian museums, and these interiors look authentic to me. Unfortunately, none of the objects here are interactive. You can't even sit on a bench. Kirsha wants us to do a sword fighting tutorial. There are light attacks, power attacks, you can block and dodge. I won every single battle in this game by spamming left click and occasionally using the one cooldown based ability Yuri has. This is a linear game, a bunch of levels that need to be completed in a sequence. The next place we'll visit is our former home, a settlement governed by the Boyar Kruchina. And this is the RPG system. You gain levels and unlock these slots, and then you put collectible items into the slots for minor bonuses. It's a strangely gamey system for a project with a historical theme. Sneaking is a mechanic. There is a side quest where we eavesdrop on the local holops. A holop is a non-free citizen, property of a boyar, a tier below serf. Kirsha is not a holop, and neither is Yuri. Our boss Kruchina sends us on an important mission. Many Muscovite nobles swore fealty to the Pole Vladislav, but some individuals, like Prince Pozharsky from Nizhny Novgorod, simply refuse to calm down. They are building an army. Our task is to travel to Novgorod, infiltrate Pozharsky's militia, and find out what they're up to. This is beautiful. Someone should make an RPG in this setting. So it turns out it's impossible to create a AAA game on a budget this small. The developers had to cut corners. This huge-ass city has a total of 4 interactive objects. The drinking pots. You drink water to replenish HP. That's it. There is nothing else. You can't even talk to the merchants. My theory is that Smuta was designed in this very specific way to get past the government auditor. When Gorislavsky sends someone to check on what is that exactly they are doing with the Institute money, the devs will show them the beautiful locations, the 2D art, the work of professional voice actors. And not knowing any RPG theory, the auditor will be satisfied. Truly is beautiful, the medium of RPG. We keep inventing new ideas. In this case, a new way of appropriating government funds. Only a small part of the city is explorable. Approaching the gate teleports us to the main square, where we get to listen to a political speech. It sounds like the actor was recording in a room with bad acoustics. Yuri clearly sympathizes with the rebels, but at this stage he is still loyal to the Polish prince. The Novgorod content is a series of some of the most boring fetch quests I've ever experienced in my life. Talk to a person, run somewhere, talk to another person. The terribleness of this game's writing is interesting. 9 times out of 10, the problem of bad RPG writing is the problem of bloat. A writer uses 40 words to tell a 20-word story. But what we have here is that the individual lines are succinct, but the characters take forever to get to the point. And after they do, they just don't stop talking. I imagine this was done to imitate the style of the book, and it didn't work. You can read text much faster than a voice actor can speak. According to an interview, the developers intentionally made the clothing more vibrant than it was historically, an artistic choice, so that the game is more visually interesting. And here is a politically controversial quest. The rebel army employs foreign mercenaries as engineers and cannoneers, but some of these foreigners are disrespectful towards the locals, and frankly, they should be taught a lesson. But we don't want to seem inhospitable, so we need to provoke them into attacking us first. I've always wanted to ask, is that true that your women are not actually women, but men dressed in women's clothing? And then they say that when no one is looking, one of you bends over in front of the other, like a woman. You are dirt. I'll make you a woman. Perhaps I'm being unreasonably charitable, but I can't tell if the game is making fun of traditional values or promoting them. This Nobel Prize-winning publication seems to imply it's the latter. But then, in the very next mission, our protagonist is shown to be absolutely pussy-whipped by a very liberated-looking Polish woman. Help me read the themes on display. An interesting side note, my colleague, a fellow patriot and voyeur Big Floppa Z, recently published a peer-reviewed paper, and it seems, based on the accounts of foreign travelers, homosexuality was near ubiquitous among all social classes in Muscovy. The implications of this are staggering. The Anglo-Saxons have been homosexing Russians for centuries. In the next area, I was struck by a realization that all dialogue in this game is redundant. Smuta is extremely quest compass dominant. It doesn't actually matter what the characters say, you just follow the compass, get to a location, fight bad guys, or click on an object. After doing this for about 2 hours, we get to meet Prince Pozharsky, a Russian national hero, one of the more famous ones. Pozharsky is in every history book. A little later, in the rebel war camp, Yuri has a conversation with Kuzma Minin, another important historical figure. Minin and Pozharsky are the Russian Chip and Dale of the Troubles. We can't customize our appearance in Smuta, but we can change our character class, which in this game is called Image. This can be done almost at any time in these field tents. Different classes wear different clothing and use different weapons. We have just unlocked the Strelets image. The Streltsi are Muscovite firearm infantry, armed with a rifle type of a weapon and a bardish. They also served as cops and firemen. Hanged Man's Tree. This game wants to be Witcher 3 so bad. That's what you'd say if you're an ignorant Russophober. A loading screen helpfully tells us that trees with hanging people were not uncommon, and in fact, they predate Christmas trees. Another feature stolen by the Polish CD Projekt Red was the Yuri Vision, which in their game is called Witcher Vision. It's not used often in this. The levels are huge, but since they are more or less free of interactive objects, there is little reason to explore them. But the game is capable of creating unintentional Oblivion-esque comedy. The woman is talking in generic barks, the convulsing man is complaining about the poles, and the cow is just mooing. So, how good is the stealth system? It's okay. This is the closest thing this game has to engaging gameplay. The enemies seem to respect the shadow, and there is a generous delay in their reactions. Boyar from Uyar. So there are boss fights. I have no idea what the point of this is supposed to be. He is stun-locked just as easily as everyone else. You have to click him like 6 extra times. That's the difference between a boss and a normal enemy. Finally, after hours of fetch questing, Yuri returns to his home village to report to the Boyar Kruchina. Same location, different season. Obviously, Smuta is not a good product, but it is a good idea, you know. Video games can be great cultural ambassadors, and they have a proven history of positive cultural change. Here is a story for you. Back in the early 2000s, a buddy of mine from Magnitogorsk was working on an early indie CRPG project called Wasteland Wolf. But when they tried introducing their game to a foreign audience, on the Black Isle official forums no less, they very quickly encountered a problem. The problem's name was Adolf Hitler. Back then, the Anglophone online culture was dominated by Gen Xers and older millennials. For many of these individuals, Wasteland Wolf was a first contact situation. They have never seen a cultural product from this part of the world before. The idea of a Fallout-like RPG originating from the ex-USSR space was wild, unnatural. They didn't know how to process it, no frame of reference. This created conflict. Posting conflict, the worst kind. Well, I've been told that Russians defeated Hitler, have they not? Perhaps we should ask them for advice. Russian discourse used to be very different from Western, because it wasn't about the right versus the left. Instead, it was about the cops versus the dorks. The cop faction had all the power, but the dork faction had all the brains. You will never defeat our ideas, piggy. Unfortunately, the ideas in question were reverse tankyism and veteran privilege, which is a notion that society pays way too much attention to World War II vets. Needless to say, for our purposes, none of this was helpful or in any way material. The Hitler problem existed because of the lack of exposure. And exposure, through the medium of video games, is what ended up solving it. The Ukrainian Stalker was published in 2007. It was followed by Metro 2033, developed by a different Ukrainian studio, published in 2010. That game was based on a book by the Russian author Dmitry Gluchovsky. I can only speak for myself and for the communities I was active in, but for me, there was a world before Stalker and the world after. This is how we stopped being foreign, and how Adolf Hitler was banished back to Avernus. In the next chapter, we'll travel to the town of Yaroslavl and deal with the internal conflicts in the rebel army. And by deal, I mean instigate. Ivan Zarutsky is another important historical figure, a leader of the Don Cossacks. Previously he served false Dmitry II, the impostor on the throne. Pozharsky wants to convince him to join us, but it doesn't look like it's working out. Let's try out a new class. This is the courtier image. This version of Yuri wields expensive-looking weapons that have very short range. Later I learned that the courtier class is supposed to be a reward for finishing the story, but in my Uyar Patriot edition it was pre-unlocked. The biggest problem in Yaroslavl are our Tatar allies, who are a little too powerful and independent. Yuri helps the Tatars in one mission and then stabs them in the back in the next. Vampire Bloodlines fans might be pleased to know that Smuta also has that bug where clothing gets stuck in your character's ass. This really made me feel at home. The main quest wants us to work with Zarutsky in order to undermine the rebels. The protagonist is incapable of saying no. Suck my dick, Pozharsky, Vladislav Liberator. As a reward, Zarutsky unlocks the mercenary image, a Western European warrior type, armed with a musket and a halberd. Yuri says a few words in German to make this feel authentic. Halberd has extra range over a bardish. After taking out a small army of Russians, Yuri suddenly decides he hates murdering people for Zarutsky and threatens to kill the Ataman the next time they meet. I have no idea what Yuri truly believes in. This man is a psychopath. If you are trying to be a secret agent, you should probably dress to fit in with the locals. You know what? I should take my own advice. Irena, if this is her real name, it isn't, sends us on a sneaking mission to a war camp we've already cleared for Zarutsky. Are you always this quick with women? After insulting our manhood, she makes us visit the same camp for the third time. This game is mocking me. The traveling theme is quite good in this. Marina Mniszek was a Polish noblewoman and, until recently, the Queen of Russia, having married false Dmitry I, and then when he was killed, she remarried false Dmitry II. Her ambition is to convert Russia to Catholicism. Previously, the game showed us the Muscovite nationalist point of view, and now we're being introduced to the Catholic opposition. Smuta defenders claim that the game's critics exaggerate its supposed mechanical simplicity. Upon further examination, there are actually all kinds of advanced mechanics, like you can throw rocks to distract bad guys. Russophobers caught lying again. Alas, a tragedy strikes. Yuri's closest friend was killed during an assassination attempt on Pozharsky. We can't keep working for both factions. Pozharsky himself comes to our tent. He knows everything, but Yuri is clearly too stupid to be held accountable for his actions. The rebel leaders send us on a quest to find a local holy man to get him to bless the war effort. I think they just want to get rid of us. The elder lives in the depths of an ancient forest where no man has gone before. That's what the loading screen says. Clearly not true, since there are Poles here. They say they're on their way to rendezvous with the army of King Sigismund near Smolensk, but that was 3 years ago. Thinking about retiring from politics and war and just buying property here in the forest. We'll be needing a lot of vitamin D supplements, though. Oh my god, Smuta is getting good.
Неужто самого себя не признал?
This is the alternative future Yuri, who speaks with a slight accent and is Catholic. The two Yuris debate politics, and the Demon Knight actually makes some material arguments. He says that all Muscovites, even the boyars, are ultimately slaves to the Tsar. In comparison, the Polish Szlachta have a lot more rights. There is a fun third dimension to this conversation. We are from the future for real. We know what will happen to the ideas of Minin and Pozharsky in 400 years. Indeed, they have evolved into something else. Those of you who are online, that is most of you, might be familiar with an Afrocentrist ideology called Hotepism. It's about seeing ancient Egypt as a source of black pride. What you didn't know is that the Muscovites have been cooking their own versions of Hotepism for decades now. The most popular of them is the Hotep of Communism, which is about Russians rewriting history to attribute all Soviet accomplishments to themselves. We Russians defeated Hitler, which is true, but, the Ukrainian and Belarusian per capita contributions were even higher. We Russians are the pioneers of space exploration. Also true, even though the lead Soviet spacecraft engineer was from Zhytomyr. You get the idea. Among millennials and Gen Xers, there is another popular Hotep, the Hotep of crackers. Imagine that you were born during the last years of the Iron Curtain. The Soviet lifestyle is discredited. Young people are eager to return to the European family. The problem is that very few of them have actually met a Westerner before, so their idea of Europeans was based on what they read in Soviet textbooks and what they absorbed through pop culture. Russians who subscribe to this ideology see world politics as Vampire the Masquerade IRL. The world is ruled by ancient European families, with the English royal family being the most powerful of them. The funny thing about this brand of Hotepism is that these individuals sometimes take liberal or progressive positions, but not because they believe in egalitarianism, but rather because they see it as a way of communicating their Europeanness. And of course, there are Muscovite conservative philosophers, such as Yegor fucked his daughter, showcasing the national costume. Now, what is Yegor famous for? Actually, it's kind of hard to tell. He believes that in the ancient past, people lived for 900 years. His philosophical system can be described as a bootleg version of Plato's theory of forms. The idea of Russianness was sent to us by God, and questioning this is a Westoid behavior and possibly Russophobia as well. We must construct additional Russia todays. Fucked his daughter labored on these ideas for 3 decades. He is working with a production crew allegedly paid for by the very same Internet Development Institute. And somehow, despite all that, his YouTube views are in the hundreds, sometimes low thousands. You thought Smuta was a waste of taxpayers' money. Yuri, you could have prevented this. We have failed. We will find another way. Releasing control. Enjoy being a holop to stinky old man forever. The rebel army is about to march on Moscow, but we have unfinished business elsewhere. Boyar Kruchina, our foster father, the schemer.
Гляжу, все никак мимо проходить не научишься.
Yuri is reunited with his friend, the Free Cossack Kirsha, the most Zaporizhian man to ever exist. Kirsha speaks with a very authentic Ukrainian accent. Our protagonist intends to solve the Kruchina problem by convincing the man to work with Pozharsky instead of the Poles. But the boyar makes convincing counter-arguments. The rebellion is a terrible idea. Things need to return to normal as soon as possible. The peasants didn't stockpile enough food. There is a risk of famine. And who will stop the Swedes when they invade again? And how are they planning on electing the new Tsar anyway? The boyars will be at each other's throats. Yuri will have plenty of time to come up with answers to these questions. No, Anastasia, don't give him the key to the jail cell. You will regret this.
Только чего?
This scene made me like Kruchina a lot more. His plan to tear apart the rebel army involves forging correspondence, and it's very clever. Yuri flees to the forest and eventually finds Kirsha's hidden encampment. This is how we unlock the final image. A shish is a Troubles-era peasant freedom fighter. This class has the most exotic weapon selection. We get a hand axe instead of a sword and a throwing axe instead of a pistol. The latter seems to have a shorter cooldown. The axes have extra brutal fatality animations. He's dead, Yuri. The horse is summoned by pressing a key, and it's very useful for navigating the huge empty maps. There is no mounted combat. If you're engaged, it just drops Yuri on the ground and runs away. The big idea for this chapter is building up Kirsha's Shish militia force so that we can eventually strike at Boyar Kruchina's little Kremlin. Some Polish publications wrote about the game, voicing concerns about anti-Polonism. Having played this to completion, I don't think there is anything to worry about. The Polish NPCs are very articulate, they are not portrayed as stupid, they are not caricatures, and for what it's worth, their costumes are some of the best looking in the game. And there is a fun scene where Yuri educates Kirsha, dispelling his ignorant beliefs. No, you silly, the Poles don't actually have dog heads. In fact, for a state-funded project, this story is interestingly open-minded. There have been 1, 2, 3 instances when the game debated the Muscovite ideas, and Yuri didn't seem to have much to say in their defense. That's strangely progressive. Suspiciously so. After the assassination of Oleg Bilibin at the Govnomaz Sergeya Vertushkina, the ownership of the Uyar-based studio was transferred to Alexei Koptsev. Who is Mr. Koptsev? Nobody knows. His not Facebook page has posts of liberal, anti-Putin, and Nazi-adjacent nature. What? The final event of the chapter is the Shish attack on the Kruchina's compound. The attack happens entirely within a cutscene. The gameplay bit is another sneaking mission that doesn't even seem to feature any enemies. Alas, the princess is in another castle. The cutscenes in the game are honestly well directed and strangely artistic. I think Yuri was supposed to say a badass one-liner, but the audio bugged out. The dramatic final battle has us facing 3 sequential groups of basic enemies. Very creative, Mr. Koptsev. Onwards to the penultimate chapter, the Moscow outskirts, the gathering of rebel armies. Kirsha finally gets to meet Pozharsky, and he is absolutely in love with the man. Kirsha is such a runat and a maloros. In the previous 2 chapters, the game came dangerously close to being fun, so now we are back to endless boring fetch questing. Someone is trying to destroy the rebel army from the inside. This Santa Claus-looking motherfucker is our primary suspect. Yuri's job is to find proofs of his misdeeds, and naturally we do this by beating people up. People like the Alpha Cossack here. I don't get this combat system. Maybe it's because the courtier is an overpowered class, but as you can see, the Cossack never even exited the staggered state. This location is called Gulai Gorod, which is an East Slavic term for a mobile fortification made up of carts and boards. These were used with great success against steppe nomads. After enduring 2 hours of some of the most mind-numbingly boring gameplay invented by human civilization, we discover that Santa is innocent. The real spy is hanged. If you betray your country, your cause, your friends, what's the point of begging for mercy? Yeah, that's what we do with fascist Russophobes. Speaking of, this is a report published by the Medialogia project, a Russian automated media monitoring system. A week from the release of the game, the project monitored 240,000 social network posts about Smuta. 14,000 of them were positive, 87,000 were negative, and the rest neutral. Negative posts included words like fiasco, failure, trash, garbage, cringe, undercooked, boring, drawn out, inexpressive. The Medialogia analysts concluded that the comments must have been written using a template. Thus, we can confidently say that the project is being subjected to a large-scale attack. Attacked by whom? The 72nd Center of Information and Psychological Operations of the Ukrainian Navy is determined to be responsible for flooding social media with mean comments, mobilizing military assets for RPG criticism. Truly, RPGs are the highest form of art. But it is concerning. First Bilibin, now this. Indeed, dark clouds are gathering over the motherland. The Poles on the other side of the river have cannons. Well, how do we solve this problem? By following the quest compass and clicking on objects. The Poles are drafting peasants to work on their fortifications. Yuri automatically changes his image to a shish so that he can blend in with the locals. That's how we get inside the cannon base and set their gunpowder on fire. Go! No, we still have an hour of fetch questing ahead of us. The chapter villain is our old frenemy Ivan Zarutsky, the ataman of the Dawn host. You have betrayed the motherland, Yuri interrogates a Cossack traitor. And this guy is like, Sir, I'm from Poland. If Ivan were to become Tsar, he would make everyone free, he says. Zarutsky is drunk, and frankly, it doesn't look like he's in charge of anything. Oh, damn it! Imagine if Kojima made a game like this. Both of you are fools, as is the rest of the boyar trash. Marina believes that a woman should be in charge of Russia because women are better at handling court intrigue. I don't think this is evidence-based. She is not scheming on behalf of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. She is in this for herself and God. What's funny is that Yuri still doesn't know her real name. Irena, or whoever you are, freedom is your punishment. You will regret not killing me, Boyar Miroslavsky. Marina will regret it a lot more, in fact. It's a very dark story. Welcome to the end game. The rebel army surrounded the Poles in Moscow. An urban level finally. The White Stone Fortress is not the same Kremlin that exists today. This is its previous incarnation. The besieged Poles are trying to break through, but our biggest enemy is the frame rate. Despite there being a war and a siege and, bodies hanging from lampposts, parts of the city still manage to function normally. This Cossack is a Charakternik, which is a type of a Cossack sorcerer, healer, and teacher. In some ways, a Zaporizhian version of Asian martial arts master. Charakterniks can catch bullets with their hands and throw them back at their enemies. They place sorcerer's enchantments on their guns. They walk on water and fire, turn invisible. They can see the future and control the weather. In the game, this is possibly the only opponent who dual wields weapons. Our protagonist teams up with Insane Clown Posse to rob a rich man's house. How does this help us defeat the Poles? What? The Poles? Yuri, you moron! You were supposed to destroy the Russians, not join them. But from my point of view, it's the Catholics who are evil. A strong opening from Kruchina with a kick in the balls. He can summon Holop allies, that's new. But ultimately the combat system is incapable of challenging the player. Kruchina is stun-locked and defeated just as easily as the very first opponent in the game. The nuclear apocalypse color filter is nature's way of telling us that the final battle is about to begin. It involves Yuri navigating open-air corridors and fighting groups of 4 enemies. But somehow the Poles are winning. And when all hope is lost, Kirsha the Cossack arrives with reinforcements. A brotherly people's moment. Go! This was Smuta, or Troubles, a state-funded video game. 20 hours of filler, 20 minutes of fun cutscenes. Is this political propaganda? Virtually everyone in the story has better politics than Yuri and his rebel friends. Zarutsky the Cossack promised to make everyone free. Kruchina wanted to keep people from starving. The Demon Knight didn't want to be a slave. The only truly smart character is a Polish noblewoman. Well, no, maybe not the only one. When we meet her in Moscow, Anastasia says that she will mastermind her own escape, and that we should take it easy, because the purpose of a boyar's head is to wear a hat. Is this traditional values? Is this game a tool of government influence? Of the Polish government, maybe? Is it a corruption scheme? A scheme to redistribute government money to a bunch of graphic artists and voice actors, perhaps? Is Smuta subversive? Is it secretly clever? No. And then we have ending slides, just like in Fallout. Yuri's relationship with Nastya eventually broke down. I probably picked the wrong dialogue option at some point. In any case, I consider this to be a good outcome. Having won the power struggle, the philosophers of the cop faction kept inventing new types of right-wing idpol, but nothing they came up with was even remotely as successful as the hotep of communism. With its invention, the system of Muscovite idealism was complete. Nothing else needed to be done. Dmitry Gluchovsky, the author of Metro books, betrayed his dork brethren by making things people actually liked. For his crimes, he was cancelled, exiled from Discord, and blocked on Xitter. And then there was the mysterious stranger, hiding behind a mask. Nobody knew his true identity. Just like everyone else, having never played Smuta, the masked patriot mistakenly believed that the game was political propaganda. But instead of opposing it, he wrote in its support. In this article, he reveals a connection between the Russian developer Oddmeter and the Polish 11-bit studio, who conspired to launch a media attack on the game. This is 1612 all over again. Many questions remain unanswered. Who ordered the assassination of Bilibin? What truly happened at the Govnomess that fateful night? Who is Mr. Koptsev? Is there any truth to the rumors? Is he the long-lost great-great-great-great-great-grandson of the Polish Prince Vladislav? Our Patreon-supported think tank will keep monitoring the situation. Patreon credits, and then we'll see if it's possible to salvage this. These videos are bankrolled by the Association of Voyenkors of the Uyarian Spring, including Jim Lawrence, Arkelis, a two-room apartment in Babruisk, Belarus, Snafu, Ganso Bomber Motherfucker, Serpin, Azazel and Baneful the Doggo, Ray Ners, Tony Spagani, Danny Kilpatrick, Eric Luitkehans, Dark Butt Pumpkin, Frog, Source is the best engine ever made, Billy Strayhorn, Mopo, C6, I Feed My Parrot Chicken, 1967 Ford Mustang, Dmitry Yu, Ilya Rubin, Yuri Solodovnichenko, Buck Swope, and Maciej V. So, what went wrong? Elementary, dear Boris. You didn't hire an RPG theorist. Every serious corporation employs at least one. Apple, Boeing, McDonald's, it's just basic stuff. Frankly, not employing a monocled RPG theorist is an extremely unwashed Moscow behavior, Mr. Gorislavsky. And sure, our services do not come cheap, but a petrostate can probably afford it, and you'll be saving money in the long term. I don't even need to see a prototype to tell you that this dialogue style will not work for a fully voiced RPG. A theorist could have told you that this should have been a top-down game. The budget of Witcher 3 was $81 million. The budget of Pillars of Eternity was $4.4 million. And that thing was made in California. Top-down is cheap, and if done right, it's just as pretty. Of course, these sorts of games seem to have much smaller audiences, and presumably we are making a game for the people, not just for enthusiasts. So this is why Smuta should have been a top-down Diablo-style clicker. For our purposes, it's a perfect genre, accessible, engaging, popular. Historical theming is an excellent fit for this type of a game. You are not just clicking on monsters to make the number go up. You are clicking on monsters to make the number go up, and you are learning about history. But that's an idea for Smuta 2 Electric Boogaloo. What they should do with this game is A. Make all the assets free to use for anyone under a very flexible license. I know some Neverwinter modders who would love some of this stuff. And B. There is no B. Forget about this game. Give me money on Patreon. See you in a few weeks.
Курва! Ну что,